Free energy now.
Imagine a world in which each home has its own power generator that obtains its energy in such a way that no fuel has to be added. Imagine every vehicle being able to run without ever stopping for fuel. Imagine each appliance having its own power source that never has to be recharged. That is the world of the future. Join with us now as we track our progress towards such a world.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Sterling Allen. You can join us online at freeenergyquest.com. We're joined today, September 4th, 2014, by Gerald Rowley of Vapster Diesel in Florida, USA. This is a success story of a technology we've been covering over the years that has now made it to market. It's a technology that improves fuel efficiency by between 10 and 20%, and it can be used synergistically in conjunction with hydroxy technology to get up to 45% efficiency. But first, let's do our This Week in Free Energy recap. Heading the news this week is a story about the Nikola Tesla papers being released by the FBI, not the ones that supposedly they carted off with after his passing. They said, we didn't do that. That is an urban legend. But what they said is that basically, here's what we do have, and it's almost 1,000 pages of documents. I scanned through a little bit of it, and just some pretty interesting stuff there. They actually classify the Nikola Tesla a story about that, they went in and absconded with all the papers after his passing as number 10 among the myths that circulate about them. I'm not sure that I believe that. They're the same ones that say they were part of the cover-up of 911 as an inside job, so I don't know if they have a lot of credibility in my book. Next story, Cold Fusion 411, Bloomy Fuels Organically Grown. David Pukta shows some fascinating effects, including bubbles from only one electrode, green algae being formed rapidly to replace brown muck. David's been on our show about a month and a half ago, and I've been hoping to get in and see his technology that supposedly creates fuel on the run. So onboard algae is making your gasoline or diesel as you're driving down the road. Pretty crazy stuff. Justin Church, the guy who came up with the HCAT, interviewed a guy from the Molecular Hydrogen Institute. It was founded to study the health benefits of hydroxy gas bubbled through water or breathed. You drink the water or breathe the gas, and supposedly it has some phenomenal health benefits. They talked for about an hour plus about that. It's pretty fascinating. Recommend you take a listen to that. And he also gave an interesting model in there of how he thinks the ECAT, Andrew Rossi's ECAT, the cold fusion process, works. Did an interview a couple days ago on this show with Dr. Ibrahim Karim. He offers biogeometry advice to free energy companies to mitigate EMF pollution. We need to stop ignoring the electromagnetic pollution effects from the technologies in which we are involved. This Canadian professor has spent 20 years studying and coming up with remedies for this pollution. It can be as simple as placing a geometrically encoded sticker on a cell phone or an energy device. The Mind Unleashed has released a story about the Quant E sports limousine saltwater-powered car. It's a great overview of this company and the product that eventually will be available for many affordable applications, not just a high-end, super expensive sports car as it is right now. In my opinion, that car looks a lot nicer than the Tesla Roadster, which is awesome. But its price tag of $1.7 million is going to scare away most people. Research about space warp from David Perez from the University of Nebraska. On Coast to Coast, Perez explained that space warp is a process by which the fabric of space becomes compressed due to mass. Perez contended that naturally occurring space warps have been reportedly experienced by several pilots when flying into thunderstorms. We also linked to a Russian video about free energy conspiracy. as you look through the description, do Google Translation, apparently it's a TV documentary that deals with conspiracy behind suppressing developments in cold fusion, magnet motors, other advances politically labeled as pseudoscience. In the conventional end of the spectrum, making a near-perfect solar absorber, a new system from MIT aims to harness the full spectrum of available solar radiation using an affordable process. And then, speaking of the Tesla Roadster, the Tesla Motor Company's, their supercharger network now allows for free coast-to-coast driving. They have enough stations around the United States to enable such a trek anywhere in the United States, basically. There's one just 15 minutes from me here in rural Utah, in Nephi, Utah. And with that, we will now jump over to our interview with Gerald. The Vapster that you've come up with is maintenance-free. Once installed, you don't have to think about it. No worry about water freezing, no issues with ECUs, check engine lights. And Jerry recently won Best in Show at the HHO Games held in Tampa, Florida, January 2014. That was basically competing with HHO hydroxy technologies, and his, which is not HHO, won the show. So congratulations on that, and welcome to the show, Jerry.
Well, thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Yeah, well, let's first get a little bit of an overview. As I was looking over my notes from the coverage that we've done of you in the past, if I understand right, it's basically a preheating of the fuel scenario. Maybe you can go into a little more details than that.
It's a little more than that. It's a change state technology. We do bring the fuel temperature up above a preheat level, almost to not quite to a vaporization level, because it is in a closed loop system. So, but it is changing the state of the fuel, allowing more oxygen to attach to the fuel when it's preheated. And we also run it over a solid metal catalyst too. So.
And this is something that nobody else has done or marketed before?
There are competitors out there. I think there's a company down in Australia that they run it through a radiator hose, but the heat content, the heat exchange, is not quite available on that in that model to do what our systems are doing. In the past, there were systems where they would actually heat the fuel in air. There was a fellow they used to race cars. I think his name was Smokey Unick. He developed a vaporized system that would vaporize the fuel and air to get high mileage. But that was done when carburetors were available. With fuel injection, it's kind of impossible to completely vaporize because of the pressure the fuel's under.
Okay. Now, when you talk about preheating, where are you getting your heat?
Well, we have several different models available, and also they are patent, covered with those. We originally started using exhaust heat, and we use still exhaust heat on very large engines. Most of our systems use engine coolant, and our third way of using heat is from electrical charging using the alternator on the engine.
Okay, so you're taking basically an electrical running from the battery charge to run a heater, basically.
Right, different ways to, like a cylinder, heater cartridge. There's different ways you can heat a heating element inside, like a cup. But the ones we use are heating loops and heating cartridges.
Okay. And how robust would your system be if you're hooking into the coolant system, for example? Sometimes, rarely nowadays, it used to be the engines would overheat all the time. Ran into that problem all the time in earlier models, but it seems like modern vehicles don't have that issue nearly as much. But if you did have an engine overheat, how robust would your system be able to handle that and not break up or whatever?
Well, a lot of the engines today run actually hotter than in the old days. They run 190, 200 degrees. We find most of our issues is getting enough heat. So actually, if the engine did overheat, it would actually improve the performance. We've had some engines that the radiator became clogged on the engine because there was, stuff in the cooling system, and actually improved our fuel mileage on that vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And when you're talking about preheating fuel and getting it to, it becomes much more volatile, which is what you're wanting. You're wanting a volatile fuel. But does that also create dangers of explosions where you don't want them?
No, it's the fuel is encapsulated in a stainless steel line, and our systems are all made out of stainless steel and welded. So even if fuel leaked out, because we deal with diesel, which is less volatile than gasoline, we never had any issues or with any type of that scenario as far as looking for an explosion to occur. We did work on gasoline in the past, and we've actually taken gasoline and boiled it on a hot plate, and we never had any issues with you'd have to have an ignition source, and with diesel there's hardly any ignition source, and it would probably have to sit there and cook a lot before you could even get it to burn. So
let's talk about
very safe. So
let's talk about what kind of products you have available.
We have at this point in time we have three series of products. One is the RV 3300, which is for small diesel engines from 2.0 liters up to about 5-liter engines. We put them on diesel-powered cars, Jeeps, refrigerated trailers, gen sets, and we also, in the next series available is the RV 4400, which accommodates a larger fuel flow from like a 5.5 up to 10-liter engines. Mostly we've installed those on delivery trucks, pickup trucks, larger gen sets, and we have an RV 8800, which is for even larger engines with fuel flows of 10 gallons an hour and up. That's also an RV, which is a reactor vessel. That's what RV stands for, and we've changed the design of that to go to an electrical system. So we're no longer selling the RV 8800s because we're testing the the EV 8800s, which will be for big rigs mostly.
Now you brought up gensets, and if I understand right, you're actually wanting to maybe move in that direction more. For example, utility scale gensets, these generators that are running town electrical systems.
Yeah, those gensets burn a lot of fuel, probably 50 gallons or more an hour. We do have a design that's patented already that would actually use exhaust heat, because you're having to heat up about 5 gallons contained in the product to get it to the right temperature to move a lot of fuel per minute. We are open to customers that have those type of product, using those products. Will come and we'll actually build a system, because they're going to have to be custom made, and like I said, design it, build it, and install it. We do get a lot of calls from overseas, Costa Rica, Panama, Honduras, A lot of Jamaica, a lot of the island countries, that's all they use is large gen sets to produce power, and we're willing to, like I said, go there and build and install and let them use it so they can see their savings that they're able to have. And also I was contacted by a ship that supplies Red Cross, or I forget the name of it, but anyway, it's off the west coast of Africa, a Mercy ship, and their fuel bill is like $1 million a year or something, because they have to have generators running all the time to keep power on the ship. So something like that, we'd be willing to have someone try the product, build and let them use it. So.
When you say have them try it, obviously there's capital costs in building something like that. How does that work?
Like I said, we're negotiable. It's going to cost. We estimate it probably at least $5,000 to build one of those large saddle type for the exhaust. So, like I said, we're negotiable. If they have other gen sets, we'll at least get one going so they can see that it, how it works and their savings, and we'll work with the customer.
Mm-hmm. And in these scenarios, what kind of return on investment typically are people seeing? Is it more for the larger or sooner for the larger systems than for the smaller ones?
It all depends on the amount of usage. A lot of the data that we have in our customer base right now is refrigerated trailers. Where they usually run about 300 hours a month, and they're able to save at least $200, $300, $400 a month on fuel for each unit. So usually the return on their investment is probably about 6 months, 6 to 7 months. Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about it is once the product is installed, there's no maintenance. They can, like I said, forget about the product that's on there, and they get the return on their investment. Not only do they get the return of their investment, they get the return on their investment, because they're continuing to save after the product's paid for.
I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but obviously something like this is not a new idea. It's one of the first things I encountered 12 plus years ago when I started covering free energy and including fuel efficiency technologies, was to preheat the fuel to get better mileage. And people say, oh, the motor company, if that worked, the motor companies would be implementing that kind of stuff. What would you say to that line?
Well, actually, the technology is probably, the basis of it is over 100 years old. The Wright brothers used it when they first flew their Wright Flyer. There was no carburetors back then, and they would actually drip fuel on top of the motor, which was flat and had 3 sides to capture the fuel, and it would heat on top of the motor, and the valves would open up on the 4th side and actually draw the vapors in. So, I mean, it's the base of that technology is 100 years old. The first diesel engines were actually run on vapor, also updraft carburetors. The fuel was vaporized to bring into the motors. Now the fuel chemical makeup is changed so much through the years, with a lot of additives at the refinery to actually try to avoid cracking the fuel, is what they call it. But if you do, it does work with gasoline. Our systems, but we don't, invite that, because you are heating gasoline, and there are issues with check engine lights on gasoline-powered engines.
Okay, but you don't have that with diesels.
No, we don't. No, that's a good thing about diesels. They're pretty simple.
Is that the primary reason why you stopped working with gasoline?
Right. There was issues with vapor lock also. If you had no way to turn the heat source off, the engine would start to vapor lock, which would start running erratically, and we didn't want to, be involved in any liability lawsuits when someone couldn't, keep their engine running. So.
Yeah. Now, the diesel, from what I understand, when you run the diesel, the diesel goes in, and there's a source that makes it hot enough that it then explodes. There's a glow head, and that process is not hampered by this preheating of the fuel?
No, I mean there are issues if you heat the fuel too hot. You do start losing some of the viscosity of the fuel, but we're not heating it extremely, to extreme temperature. Like I said, the diesel is a process where it runs on compression, and bringing air into it. There's no spark. It's just the compression of the fuel with the air keeps the combustion running. Whereas in a gasoline engine, there's always a spark keeping it's a higher octane, whereas diesel is like a cetane of like 40 is most common.
Mm-hmm. We're going to be going to break here in a second, but maybe you can start addressing a question of the whole process of installation. How involved is this something that people can buy and install themselves, or are they going to require an installer, and how long does that take?
Like I said, our niche market with the reefers, our products are pretty universal. We do sell kits. Usually takes about 2 hours to do an install. We offer, instruction manuals. We do come and we'll train, the fleet technicians to install them, and it's not that involved. So.
Okay. Well, we will catch more after this break in about 4 minutes.
Known worldwide as the most consistently fascinating, informative, and unique program on radio, the Jeff Rense program can be yours to listen to anytime, anywhere, whenever you want to hear it. For pennies a day, our subscribers can download any of Jeff's thousands of programs featuring a treasury of newsmakers, researchers, eyewitnesses, and incredible subjects, all in MP3 commercial-free, crystal clear 56-bit digital sound, and take these often unforgettable programs with them wherever they go. As a subscriber, you can also listen live at airtime, online, anywhere in the world, or browse through our archives of over 6,000 hours of legendary broadcasts. Subscribe now by taking the link at the top of Rense.com and enrich your mind with the most unique panorama of vital information and the best independent, honest journalism in radio. Look for the Subscribe Now link on Rense.com and give yourself the knowledge you need for these unprecedented times.
Presently, the #1 technology in our top 5 exotic free energy technologies listing at top5energy.com is what we call hydroxy technology, in which onboard electrolysis creates oxygen and hydrogen. Unseparated, it's also called Brown's gas, or HHO. By then adding this to the fuel, the mileage and horsepower of an engine can be significantly improved while reducing emissions. One of the reasons for this is that Brown's gas breaks down the larger chain fuel molecules so they can be utilized and not exhausted, unburned. There are many companies worldwide that are making and selling these hydroxy systems. We've compiled a list for you at besthydroxytechnologies.com. When you find one you like, be sure to tell them that Sterling Allen of PES referred you. Again, that's besthydroxytechnologies.com.
Free energy, now!
Welcome back to the show. We are talking with Gerald Rowley of Vapster Diesel. That's VAPSTER, Diesel, DIESEL.com is their website. And he's got a product that's in the marketplace. You can buy these now. Return on investment about 6 months. We were talking before we went to break about the installation process. That leads to another question, which is, do you have, are you open to setting up dealer and manufacturer contracts, licenses for rollout worldwide?
Well, right now we're just doing business inside the States. We are looking for distributors. We're looking for truck trailer repair centers that actually work on the trailers and trucks, so they actually have the customers that come to them, and they would be able to offer this product to them. So we're open to, like I said, to add more distributors in that that fashion.
Well, our audience is international. More than half of the people that listen to and watch our show are from overseas. If somebody from there contacted you, would you turn them away?
No, we would, like I said, take a look at what they have to offer as far as their customer base and see what we can put together. I do have a business partner that actually handles the business transactions. I'm basically the technical person as far as setting the equipment up and testing it and making sure it's operating correctly in the field.
In the introduction, I mentioned that your system works synergistically with hydroxy systems. It's not using the same principle of overkill, doing the same thing to the fuel. It's different methods of improving the fuel efficiency, so you can actually apply both technologies to get an added effect on the fuel efficiency. Do you want to speak to that for a minute?
Yeah, our process actually, we're working on with the fuel. We're actually treat the fuel, change state, where the hydroxy is actually adding fuel to the air. So the air that's coming into the engine, you're taking the hydrogen off the Brown's gas and igniting it. I did have a vehicle in the past that I did use the hydrogen system with it, and it does work. Unfortunately, the system that I was using, the plates that produce the hydrogen, developed a film over it, and I would have to clean it like once a week to keep the hydrogen coming off the plates. And to me, I'm basically like just put it on and let it go type guy, and eventually I just got tired of messing with it, so I just took it back off. But the test that we ran it for about a month, cleaning the plates. On the truck that I use wasn't a 7.3 Ford utility truck. It was baseline before any systems were put on at 14.7. With my system on it, we're able to bring it up to 17.7 pretty consistently. And then with the hydroxy system, we were able to add another mile to the gallon, pretty consistent. So about 18.7 total with both systems. Like I said, I just became, unenamored with the maintenance on the HHO. But like I said, they do work. You gotta play with them. So
I have to comment on that, because my understanding is these technologies, these companies. As I mentioned in the advertisement in the break, besthydroxytechnologies.com is our listing of the best ones that we know of, that those that are selling 70,000 units, for example, they've worked through those issues and they don't have those kinds of problems. I don't know about the water in the winter if you have to drain the system. I know one of them does. They request, or they recommend that you drain the system so you don't freeze in the winter, but some of them don't have to do that. I don't know what they do, whether they add enough of the electrolytes so it's super caustic and
right. They concentrate the electrolyte, so it takes a lot more cold weather to actually freeze it. So
yeah, but the other thing you mentioned in terms of the mode of action, my understanding is Brown's gas is not just adding fuel to the air, but it also helps break down the larger chain molecules, so it's acting as a catalyst to break the larger chains into smaller chains that burn much better and are not wasted, because the engine doesn't burn the big chain molecules.
Exactly. I mean, that's what our system does. It, like I said, it does help break the chains down, and if that's what they're claiming, they're getting their better fuel mileage, then everything together helps. So
I'd be curious, cost-wise, return on investment-wise, if you had both systems on, if it would make sense from that point of view. But that's
if I had one customer, his fuel bill was $6,000 a month, so I guess he'd be open to putting both systems on. Because that's a lot of fuel to pay out every month. So
yeah. In terms of the installation, could you kind of paint a visual picture for us of where it goes in the engine compartment or outside? Does it matter? And where does it go in the fuel delivery process?
Yeah, it's like a three-stage process. We try to locate the product as close to the injector pump as possible, and after the fuel water separator. So we'll locate, say on a pickup truck, Cummins or Duramax, just pretty much a lot of room under the hood. So we have brackets that will mount the product securely, and then we'll run heater hoses from the existing heater system to the unit, and then the fuel lines will run from the fuel filter system to the unit, and then from the unit back to the injector pump. So those are low pressure lines, and that's, like I said, that's basically the three-step process.
Is there any electrical control system that has to be hooked up?
On the RVs, no. On the EVs, yes. We do have thermostats, and we do have we're using a power inverter, because you're needing at least 1,000 watts of electricity continuously to use it on the EV unit. So those are controlled from the charging system through, like I said, a thermostat unit and also a power unit.
And those are the ones that would be like utility scale, right?
Well, that would be for the big rigs, the big trucks.
Okay.
Right.
We have one more break. Don't go away. We'll be back in about 4 minutes.
Heart and Body Extract is like no other herbal support for the cardiovascular system. It's all natural and has no adverse side effects with any substance. Above all, Heart and Body Extract was formulated to keep your arteries clean and clear, to promote healthy circulation, and to assist with healthy blood pressure levels. It also supports regular heart rate and helps maintain healthy blood sugar levels. Heart and Body Extract is made by a company that has provided 14 years of impeccable service to everyone, and their products have never had a price increase. So if you want youthful energy, strength, and stamina, go to www.heartandbody.com or call 1-866-295-5305.
As you listen to and benefit from this Free Energy Quest show, as we track the many cutting-edge clean energy technologies likely to not only be ecological, but economical as well, we would like to remind you that we are listener-supported. You can send donations via PayPal to donate@pesn.com, or you can click on the donate link found on our web pages. You might consider a monthly pledge. You're welcome to send us ideas about possible advertisers or products to present to our esteemed audience via that email as well. Because we spend so much time doing the news, we don't spend quite as much time as we should looking for advertisers and items we can sell in our store, a process that can be quite time-consuming. So presently we depend on your donations to help keep us afloat. With your assistance, we can help transform this planet from a scarcity slave mentality to an abundance creator mentality, with exotic free energy technologies bringing power and freedom to the people. Again, that email address is donate@pesn.com.
Free energy, now!
Welcome back to the break. Talking with Gerald Rowley from Vapster Diesel. And wanted to ask you, as you talk about installing these things on gensets, obviously one application would be emergency preparedness. If you had an emergency, now your fuel goes longer than it would without the Vapster attached to this. Do you think that would make a wise investment for people who are emergency preparedness minded, either for a short-term emergency or for a world fall apart scenario?
Yeah, I was working with Florida Atlantic University. They have gen sets throughout the campus, and I was talking to Dr. Ganai, who helped me develop the product and test it, and he was going to make some inroads to to speak to some of the emergency people that have to maintain those. And I said, well, because they're only running a couple hours a month just to maintain them, that they didn't think it was necessary. But any government or utility companies that have to run these, I think they have to run a week out of a month on some of these government, the cities. They have to run their backup, but they would save even if they ran them a week. They'd cover their cost, and at least by 9 months they would cover the cost. But I would like to see eventually the OEMs install the devices at the factory, and so they'd already be prepared to pass the savings on to the customers. So.
Yeah. Now, in terms of world fall apart scenario, then fuel is going to become very expensive and hard to come by, so you're going to want to squeeze every ounce out of the fuel that you can. So it would make total sense for somebody who is wanting to get their system set up for that kind of scenario.
Yeah, even on a hybrid car, the ones that are diesel powered, you can go a lot more miles on a gallon of diesel putting the system on a hybrid.
One thing we've not talked about yet or mentioned is you've got some third-party testing under your belt on this. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, we've tested several years with the University of Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, Florida. We've done testing on Duramax 07 6.6 Chevy pickup. It's a one-ton pickup truck. We did 600 miles of testing on the truck, and overall, it was all high-speed, road, highway driving, and we were able to average 18.2% mileage increase on that vehicle. We also have done 2 sets of testing on the reefers, the 2.0 Yanmar engines on a Thermo King SB210 system, where we ran the systems at high speed, which is the high speed is actually the freezing mode. It brings whatever product is in the 53-foot trailer down to 0 or below. We ran tests on those, and the results averaged were 13 point something average. And then in the evenings, we noticed something that took place because I guess the cooler air and the higher humidity in the evenings, we were seeing test results going up into the 22%, which we thought that was kind of fascinating to see those results in the evening time. And we've those tests PDFs are available at our website on the left-hand menu. People can look at those tests, and they're available for viewing.
Okay. Now, let's say somebody wanted to play around with gasoline vehicle, and maybe they had a genset, for example, and they didn't have to worry about any kind of ECU or check engine lights turning on. Could they use this system, or do you have to have a different model for gasoline versus diesel?
In the past, I've been doing this for like 20 years. My first prototypes are a lot different, more experimental than they are what we produce now. There is a certain temperature range you want to stay in with gasoline, which is going to be different from the diesel. I won't provide it's trademark, trade secrets for us, but it does work. You're going to be using a carbureted system where you would switch off the carburetor and then just use a vapor coming out of a box. So it will work, but we don't sell product, and safety is a big issue. So I know there's a lot of experimenters that have called me and kind of tried to bend my ear as far as what to do next, but I just I'll give them a couple hints, but I don't, I just wish them well. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that I wanted to get to also is when we were talking a couple days ago, you mentioned that you've been playing around even longer than this with what we've come to call a QMogen, a self-loop motor generator system, where a smaller motor is turning a larger generator looped back to keep the smaller motor turning with energy excess left over. Do you want to talk about kind of what you've come up with along those lines or been experimenting with?
Yeah, I've built a lot of different prototypes through the years using magnets, gravity, all kinds of off-the-wall stuff, rocking horses. But I've actually come into a design that uses resonance, induction, gravity, a couple other things that work together to have this generator coming up to power. So right now I'm testing the output. I'm using 3 different multimeters to double check my my results, and I will be having an electrical engineer that works for IBM to come in and do a final test to see what the readings total out to be. So, but it's a lot of fun to see something come together after a lot of hard work, and we'll see what the future holds.
Yeah, I'd love to come see that if you get that thing running. Obviously, the big test is if you can get a self-looped, keeping itself running with energy left over, run it long enough to rule out any batteries on board.
Mm-hmm.
Then you know you've got something.
Yeah, I'm using right now like RC parts, parts that I'm able to get at a hobby store to build it. To go to the next level would, actually have to have an electrical engineer come in and, build it so it's actually be able to put out some usable power. So.
Yeah, it's basically small components, and you've done quite a bit of modifications. You're taking things apart, modifying the coils and whatnot, so this is not, a motor you're buying off the shelf and a generator you're buying off the shelf and putting them together in some way. You're making substantial changes, correct?
Yeah, it's a lot of fabrication, testing coil designs and outputs. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I've never seen anything like it before, so it's kind of my passion right now. And hopefully in a couple of weeks we'll have something to deliver to you as far as the outputs versus the inputs.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Just got a couple minutes here. Let's wrap up anything you want to say that we've not covered yet on the Babster system.
Like I said, we're open to any of these refrigerated trailer fleets to come on board as a partner. We'll work to help them save on their fuel. I'm located in Southeast Florida, so any of the Miami fleets or there's a lot of large fleets out there. Hale, KLLM, which I've done business in the past, but we'd like to see some people come forward, and we have the capability that put money back in their pocket, so it's available. So take advantage.
Yeah, and the people who are going to be getting the biggest return on investment are obviously truckers, heavy fleet, kinds of operations, as opposed to, the small automobile where you're just driving it, going to groceries and things like that.
Right. The more the engine runs, the more you save. So it's a reefer usually is running 200 hours a month. So they're on once food or fish or whatever's in the truck, it has to stay frozen or refrigerated. They can't shut them off. So that's so they're constantly burning fuel. Mm-hmm.
And you showed some photographs. You sent me a packet of photos. Quite impressive, this thing. Give us an idea of the size in comparison to the engine. What would it be compared to? It looks like maybe a couple of alternators in size.
I would say the size of a liter bottle, a 2-liter bottle, probably a little smaller than a 2-liter Coke bottle is probably what the size is. Mm-hmm. That's a good idea. I should maybe stand something beside it and you can get a comparison. But it's not a large unit. Yeah.
Well, Gerald, we really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing what you have.
Anytime, sir. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the work that you do, bringing the news, and you've been doing it for a while. Appreciate it.
All right. Go to BabsterDiesel.com.
You've been listening to Free Energy Now, brought to you by PES, Pure Energy Systems. You may access past archives and upcoming show info at freeenergynow.net and join us for our daily news at freeenergynews.com. We invite you to see our directory of energy technologies at peswiki.com. That's peswiki.com. PES, the Pure Energy Systems Information Network.
You're listening to the Rents Radio Network, nationwide and worldwide on the net and at rents.com.
Advice to free energy companies to mitigate EMF pollution. We need to stop ignoring the electromagnetic pollution effects from the technologies in which we are involved. This Canadian professor has spent 20 years studying and coming up with remedies for this pollution. It can be as simple as placing a geometrically encoded sticker on a cell phone or an energy device. The Mind Unleashed has released a story about the Quant E sports limousine saltwater-powered car. It's a great overview of this company and the product that eventually will be available for many affordable applications, not just a high-end, super expensive sports car as it is right now. In my opinion, that car looks a lot nicer than the Tesla Roadster, which is awesome. But its price tag of $1.7 million is going to scare away most people. Research about space warp from David Perez from the University of Nebraska on Coast to Coast. Perez explained that space warp is a process by which the fabric of space becomes compressed due to mass. Perez contended that naturally occurring space warps have been reportedly experienced by several pilots when flying into thunderstorms. We also linked to a Russian video about free energy conspiracy. As you look through the description, do Google Translation, apparently it's a TV documentary that deals with conspiracy behind suppressing developments in cold fusion, magnet motors, other advances politically labeled as pseudoscience. In the conventional end of the spectrum, making a near-perfect solar absorber, a new system from MIT aims
Free Energy Now.
Imagine a world in which each home has its own power generator that obtains its energy in such a way that no fuel has to be added. Imagine every vehicle being able to run without ever stopping for fuel. Imagine each appliance having its own power source that never has to be recharged. That is the world of the future. Join with us now as we track our progress towards such a world.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Sterling Allen. You can join us online at freeenergyquest.com. We're joined today, September 4th, 2014, by Gerald Rowley of Vapster Diesel in Florida, USA. This is a success story of a technology we've been covering over the years that has now made it to market. It's a technology that improves fuel efficiency by between 10 and 20%, and it can be used synergistically in conjunction with hydroxy technology to get up to 45% efficiency. But first, let's do our This Week in Free Energy recap. Heading the news this week is a story about the Nikola Tesla papers being released by the FBI, not the ones that supposedly they carted off with after his passing. They said, we didn't do that. That is an urban legend. But what they said is that basically, here's what we do have, and it's almost 1,000 pages of documents. I scanned through a little bit of it, and just some pretty interesting stuff there. To harness the full spectrum of available solar radiation using an affordable process. And then, speaking of the Tesla Roadster, the Tesla Motor Company's, their supercharger network now allows for free coast-to-coast driving. They have enough stations around the United States to enable such a trek anywhere in the United States, basically. There's one just 15 minutes from me here in rural Utah, in Nephi, Utah. And with that, we will now jump over to our interview with Gerald. The Vapster that you've come up with is maintenance-free. Once installed, you don't have to think about it. No worry about water freezing, no issues with ECUs, check engine lights. And Jerry recently won Best in Show at the HHO Games held in Tampa, Florida, January 2014. That was basically competing with HHO hydroxy technologies, and his, which is not HHO, won the show. So congratulations on that, and welcome to the show, Jerry.
Well, thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Yeah, well, let's first get a little bit of an overview. As I was looking over my notes from the coverage that we've done of you in the past, if I understand right, it's basically a preheating of the fuel scenario. Maybe you can go into a little more details than that.
It's a little more than that. It's a change state technology. We do bring the fuel temperature up above a preheat level, almost to not quite to a vaporization level, because it is in a closed loop system. So, but it is changing the state of the fuel, allowing more oxygen to attach to the fuel when it's preheated. And we also run it over a solid metal catalyst too. So.
And this is something that nobody else has done or marketed before?
There are competitors out there. I think there's a company down in Australia that they run it through a radiator hose, but the heat content, the heat exchange, is not quite available on that in that model to do what our systems are doing. In the past, there were systems where they would actually heat the fuel in air. There was a fellow that used to race cars. I think his name was Smokey Unick. He developed a vaporized system that would vaporize the fuel and air to get high mileage. But that was done when carburetors were available. With fuel injection, it's kind of impossible to completely vaporize because of the pressure the fuel's under.
Okay. Now, when you talk about preheating, where are you getting your heat?
Well, we have several different models available, and also they are patent, covered with those. We originally started using exhaust heat, and we use still exhaust heat on very large engines. Most of our systems use engine coolant, and
they actually classify the Nikola Tesla a story about that, they went in and absconded with all the papers after his passing as number 10 among the myths that circulate about them. I'm not sure that I believe that. They're the same ones that say they were part of the cover-up of 911 as an inside job. So I don't know if they have a lot of credibility in my book. Next story, Cold Fusion 411, Bloomy Fuels Organically Grown. David Pukta shows some fascinating effects, including bubbles from only one electrode, green algae being formed rapidly to replace brown muck. David's been on our show about a month and a half ago, and I've been hoping to get in and see his technology that supposedly creates fuel on the run. So onboard algae is making your gasoline or diesel as you're driving down the road. Pretty crazy stuff. Justin Church, the guy who came up with the HCAT, interviewed a guy from the Molecular Hydrogen Institute. It was founded to study the health benefits of hydroxy gas bubbled through water or breathed. You drink the water or breathe the gas, and supposedly it has phenomenal health benefits. They talked for about an hour plus about that. Pretty fascinating. Recommend you take a listen to that. And he also gave an interesting model in there of how he thinks the ECAT, Andrew Rossi's ECAT, the cold fusion process, works. Did an interview a couple days ago on this show with Dr. Ibrahim Karim. He offers biogeometry